making that statement. The table matters. Who you invite to the table matters, and who you influence at that table matters. Esha, welcome. We're ready to you to take our infinite potential to new heights so that we can do that kind of challenging work.
Thank you so much, Meredith. And what a great reminder from Hope, right? And as I stand here and I just take a minute to think about how I got here, I'm so infinitely grateful to the women, men, allies who shared the table with me. So it's with that gratitude and humility, and as we reach the close of this magical day, that I've put forth a thesis that's pretty ambitious and one that I'm questionably qualified to speak on. Luckily, you have received a ton of incredible advice and stories from the incredible co-speakers in this event here. So I'm just here to share a story. And my story that I want to share with you today is how I ended up almost broke and hungry in New York City. Next slide, please. Before we start and before I share my story, I want to just take a moment to reset and think about how we all got here. We're all here today because we're seeking connection, joy, love, contact, guidance. And so we come into these events with ambitions, with goals, and then this thing happens. We leave these events, we probably open our phone, we check our notifications, maybe you're already on it, and we get called by work, our family, and all of that positive intention dissipates. And we kind of get consumed into the world around us, and we start to lose ourselves. And I appreciate that we've really been exacerbated by a global pandemic where losing ourselves feels more and more like a much thinner line. Next slide. And as we think about, the pandemic and the impacts, one of the recent phenomenons that has come out of this, and this is not an official psychological term, is revenge bedtime procrastination. I read about this recently. It was a term born out of China, which describes this sensation where we feel so out of control during the day that we spend our nights in bed aimlessly swiping and scrolling, trying to regain control over our day and taking revenge out on ourselves and our sleep. Next slide, please. And this has really devastating consequences, not just on ourselves, but also on those who love us. And I would know, I've been there, so I'm not saying this with any judgment. And I'm also not here to tell you about the psychology of why your phone time, excessive phone time is not good for you. What I want to do is ask you a really simple question. And that is, what is it that you're looking for? And I don't just mean on your phone. I mean here, I mean in the present. What is it that you're here seeking today? Next slide, please. What I want to pose today is a very simple thought and potentially the answer, that everything you're looking for, your infinite potential, is already within you. It's just that in your hustle and your routine and jumping from Zoom call to Zoom call, you just may not be accessing it. And like I said, there's been many, many moments in my life where I wasn't either. So if we move forward to share my story of how I got to New York City, it started in a gray cube farm at Dell EMC in Hopkinton, Massachusetts. I was there elbowing my way through Excel models, trying to determine the profitability on our most complex and global deals. Next slide, please. There was one problem. I didn't love the Excel part. My favorite part was actually when we got on the phone with clients and pitched the deal. And the problem with that was they were always on a golf course or somewhere exotic, which is obviously not where I was. I knew something about this wasn't for me, but when I asked my boss if I could try something else, his words were, and I quote, "You have to do your time." Something inside me told me that I was actually meant to be in front of clients. Actually, that's not true. There was a mentorship program that I was part of where a woman who was paired to mentor me observed me and said, "Hey," and she actually wrote it on a yellow Post-it note and underlined it 3 times, like, "You should be in front of clients." And at that point, I didn't really believe her or understand what she was saying. And now in the present moment, I thought, crap, maybe she was onto something. And then I realized I didn't have any experience to actually move my career in that direction. So I did what a lot of people do. I got on LinkedIn and I started having career chats, probably what felt like 50 with strangers, to realize that no big brand name company was going to hire me. But there was this opportunity at a startup in New York City. It was something that involved a serious pay cut. And I was really debating whether it was the right choice. I called up a mentor of mine, a former professor from Babson College, and he said to me, Esha, do you think you can live off peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for a bit? When I realized the answer was yes, I packed my bags and I moved. Next slide, please. And I landed in New York in an area of East Village called Alphabet City. For those of you who don't know, there are a set of lettered streets between First Ave and the East River. And I lived in what you would consider a pretty typical walk up in New York. This is what I actually picture the building. And you can see my roommate's window, and it felt great. I was living on my own. Next slide, please. But you see, I didn't exactly have a window. My window looked into the inside of the building, which meant that it actually didn't receive any sunlight. Now, all of that didn't matter because at Applico, the company I had shifted to, we were helping clients build mobile apps and platform technology. I was managing a portfolio of clients and working with some of the smartest people I've ever worked with. Typical startup issues where we had sales selling one thing, clients looking for something else, and then we weren't very good at developing estimate hours. And I was left to pick up the pieces. This left me constantly wrangling with clients over overages and over missed expectations. And I was pulled into all these different directions. But it felt so good to be hustling and doing what I thought I should be doing. I was running over here to chat with an engineer, then I'd pace over to our COO and review a contract over a beer. And then I'd make a call to a client and start negotiating with them over an overage. And then I'd work late into the night catching up on emails. I felt so important. And in a way I was, because I was managing half of the firm's revenue. Next slide, please. I was also fulfilling my professor and mentor's premonition. My diet consisted of 4 major food groups. The first was Starbursts. They were the easiest and most accessible, lying at a bowl at the reception desk, rather. Next was Trader Joe's sauté noodles, which today, they kind of make me queasy when I look at them, but I've honestly eaten them probably 200 times. OJ's and crackers were following that, cheap and easy. And finally, the holy grail, focaccia di raviola from DeChiro's. This one stands out. You see, I was earning so little, and once taxes and student loans and rent was paid, there wasn't much left. I remember going to an annual OBGYN visit, accidentally out of network, and ending up in tears over an $800 medical bill. That was almost an entire month of rent for me. So that's why DeChiro's was so special. When my boyfriend would take me out to eat, which was almost always at DeChiro's, I would order 2 meals. He thought I had a big appetite, which for the record, I do. But the reality was that I was just hungry. So one meal was to stay and the other was to go. And that's something I wasn't ready to admit until years later. Next slide, please. And then the city finally broke me for the first time. You see, the hustle was beginning to pay off. In about 3 months, I'd been promoted to lead the client services team. But I was barely getting paid more. I honestly had no idea what that meant. And my lifestyle was beginning to catch up to me. My diet, as you saw, and my habits of eating every meal at my desk meant that I had no physical movement in a day other than my commute. And during a routine physical, I actually found out that I was overweight and I had high cholesterol in my early 20s. On top of that, I had crippling anxiety. My phone would buzz every time I received an email, which was basically 24 hours a day. And I would literally have cold sweats that something had gone wrong with the client. My heart was constantly palpitating. And finally, I was working so late that I don't know how I got home most nights. My commute was luckily a walk from 23rd Street to 11th Street. And well past midnight, I'd walk it home, usually calling my boyfriend for company, and my eyes were practically closed. I had no time for myself, no time for my relationship. And my mom, queen of honesty, told me that my apartment was so depressing that she didn't want to come visit. And she didn't. So I was hustling, but I wasn't living. I was constantly reacting to the set of circumstances life had presented to me and life that I had created. Next slide, please. One Friday night, I came home late and I had decided that I'd had enough. I turned off all my email notifications and I finally slept. I slept like I hadn't slept in months before, probably since I'd moved to the city. And that's actually the day I found out that sunlight did come in through my window for exactly 7 to 12 minutes when the sun hit that exact opening in the building. And after that, I have never turned on email notifications ever again. That was just the beginning of my obsession with sleeping and napping and dreaming. And I learned that physiological benefits aside, there were so many other powerful spiritual benefits. And I also learned that many of history's greatest thinkers were big proponents of napping. I also began to have really powerful dreams, some that were clarifying and helped me answer questions, especially when I slept with an intention. Others that were almost like premonitions and helped me see moments into the future. Dreams were also nightmares that shed light on the darkest parts of my personality that I wasn't ready to really address yet. But I began to write them down and I began to listen. Next slide, please. Reconnecting with my faith was the next big change. I was looking for guidance at this time when I had taken a big gamble and I was kind of lost in what to do next. I didn't know exactly what client management was, and I definitely did not know how to lead a team of client managers. But my faith restored the idea that if God or a higher power or the universe had brought me this far, that I would go a little bit further. And so every night before I went to bed, I said the same prayer, which I say today, which is, God, give me the courage to make the right decisions and give me the strength to follow through. With this renewed faith in myself, I began to devour books, scour the internet, attend conferences, and I started to make changes to our client management practices that helped minimize the chaos, like American Express, who led the world in these metrics. And if you zoom into this journal, you can actually see this is an entry I wrote in around 2012. I was actually writing my own story, starting to shape my future. Next slide, please. And finally, I started to pay more attention to the voices around me. There were people who were standing in my corner, mentors, friends, family, colleagues, who really believed in me and who also told me things about myself, that in the moment really stung, that I wasn't ready to address. And it was really because I'd spent so much of my life growing to be independent and self-sufficient that I didn't know what it looked like to lean on others for help. And so instead of accepting their help, I would fight back. I would often clam up. I would shut them out. But an idea was planted. And again, this was the start of a journey that would span over a decade. But it was this idea that if I leaned on those who cared about me, I would get further. And I was lucky because I am standing on the shoulder of giants. Next slide, please. After I moved to New York City, all of these conscious changes started to make effect. And I started to have more balance in my work and personal life. And I was implementing so many best practices from American Express that I finally said, why don't I just go work there? And again, through another connection from Babson College, I was able to get an interview. The interview took place in their downtown office, but I had to get back uptown, even though I thought, the interview went well. Since it was mid-morning, I decided to take a cab. And the cab driver was Sikh, and he was playing these hymns, which reminded me of songs that I had grown up with, that my late grandmother had sung to me. While we were going up the FDR highway, he asked me about myself, where I was from, and we got chatting. At the end of the ride, I remember looking out the window at the 23rd Street exit of FDR and just feeling in awe of the skyline. And to my surprise, at the end of the ride, he turned around and handed me a CD of hymns. And it was at that moment where I had this feeling that my grandmother's spirit was coming through him to tell me, this is exactly where you're supposed to be right now. This is what it feels like to be living in your full potential. And I did get the job. Next slide, please. As we wrap up here, I want to share with you, again, not advice, but that change is an inside job. And for me, harnessing my potential happens when I'm sleeping, when I'm praying, and I'm paying attention to those around me who challenge me, but also care for me. The change didn't stop there. I have made so many mistakes since then, and I continue to grow. But it was at that moment that I'd started to listen to the voices inside me. And then because of that, I knew I would continue to grow. Let's close here by just taking a moment to close our eyes. And if you're seated, ground all 10 toes into the floor and just extend your spine up and your crown long, relax your shoulders up and back. And as we started this day with some breaths, let's just take 5 deep breaths together. In through our nose and out. And while you're taking these breaths, I'd love for you all to think about what is that moment where you felt everything was conspiring in your direction? And how do you leave today with that feeling? What does it look like to harness your inner voice? Last breath in and out. If you close your eyes, thank you for indulging me, and you can open them. My name is Esha Bawa, and I am so passionate about sharing my mistakes and uplifting others. I've presented my contact information here only if I can be of privilege and of service to you. So please stay in touch. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you so much, Esha. Those deep breaths and that message was amazing. Pay attention. And you may be needing feedback that you aren't necessarily prepared for. Moving on from there, I would like to close our day out with someone who has done me an incredible service, and I hope what she is prepared to share today will do the same for you. CorinneSharp, our executive director, this amazing woman is ready to be the change, help you choose to challenge, and engage your network.
Thanks so much, Meredith, and thank you for doing an amazing job today, being our host and MC, and to all of our speakers. Next slide. I took away so many things today. Challenge with confidence. Sometimes that can be hard, and some of our speakers talked about being brave, and our cultures in your organization's ready for that. But lean on others if you need someone to help with that confidence. If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a chair. And there was some chats going on about bring more than one chair, bring several chairs. Someone once said, don't make it a folding chair. That's too easy to take away from the table. We all need to acknowledge that. Winnie, I didn't learn 4 lessons. You had said, now on to lesson 2, and I'd already written down 4 things. So there was an overwhelming response to have you come back and do a We've Got WIT webinar with the WIT Network. Next slide. Everything you are looking for is already in you. What a powerful message. And if you can't bring it out within yourself, there are 200 plus women on this call today and men who will help find it in you. No one truly sees the legacy of their best work, yet the world will always need our best work. Meredith Horvater said that. And become an agent of change. Gabriella's keynote was absolutely spectacular today. Thank you to all of our speakers. Next slide, please. So just one little more commercial about the WIT Network. We would love to have you, if you're interested, to join our fabulous network. We host events every single month around the world as well as globally. And for the month of March, we're offering a 10% discount on our individual memberships. It's only $87 a year to participate in everything we have to offer. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at women@thewitnetwork.com. Next slide. So just a few things that are coming up. We've got members and non-members. We've got an action pact. We've got cracking the confidence code from perfectionism to peak performance at the end of the month. Patty Grimm is an author, an amazing speaker. Christine and I are hosting a tea time just to connect with other women from around the world. Come bring your favorite teacup and let's just have tea and chat. We've got Hillary Lipsig from Red Hat. She's going to be helping us lead our first Women in Engineering community dedicated for women in these professions. And she's going to talk about her path, a self-taught engineer. And those stories need to be heard. She's going to be fabulous as well. We've got mentoring circles. You'll be able to go to our What's Happening page and see all of these events, as well as the local community events that our volunteer community leaders put on around the world. Next slide, please. We also have a session coming up to discuss our partnership with the Tribute Mentoring app. This is a fabulous app that members have an opportunity to take advantage of, to be a member, find a member, just follow the stories of incredible women. So come hear from Sarah Haggard, who is the founder of Tribute and who we just love having a partnership within the WIT Network. Gabriella's back again at the end of April with a session on growing your career with intention. She has this fabulous framework that she's used for years with several steps that she's taken. And it's not always a linear path or a specific ladder. So come back and hear Gabriella speak again. And then at the end of April, Christine and I will be hosting it, everything you wanted to know about the WIT Network, because we've had so many people join us. So we welcome you to come and participate in some of those events. Next slide. So now get out some of your cameras. We've got some thank yous to make for our grateful sponsors. So thank you to Jabra and Mercer McKay Digital Storytelling as our sponsors today, as well as champion members, advocates, rubrics, supporters, Cognizant Microsoft Business Group, WattServe, NetApp, and as well as our community partnerships here that I'll tell you a little bit about in a minute or so. Next slide. Thank you to our champion and global members and partners that you see here. Microsoft is one of our founding sponsors, Cognizant Microsoft Business Group, Mercer McKay, Jabra, Compugen, PwC, Red Hat, Compugen have all opened up to unlimited membership to their employees around the world. Next slide. And then all of these organizations we have welcomed in over the past 2.5 years since we started this organization. And we're so grateful for all of their support. And we love hearing the stories of other women, whether it's in our career journey series, Be Your Best, our mentoring circles, or just having chats and get-togethers as we often share. Next slide. So get your cameras out because there's a lot of detail on these slides. So Women in Cloud, we are so thrilled to be a partner with this organization who focus on providing access to women-run organizations and women entrepreneurs. The work that they have done is just absolutely incredible. And they have a whole bunch of events happening for the rest of this week. So check them out at their website as well. Next slide. Another partner that's really important to us in the community is Black Channel Partner Alliance. We just had Lauren, one of the leaders of that organization, do one of our WITX talks while we were celebrating Black History Month, which we celebrate, women of color and people of color every single month. And so they focus on Black founders, and we welcome the opportunity to continue the partnership and continue to make sure that voices are heard. Next slide. And finally, the International Association of Microsoft Channel Partners, an organization that we have partnered with for many, many years. And we're grateful for that partnership, particularly the leadership that's been in place for the last year. It's just been incredible to see the work that we can do within organizations fostering diversity, inclusion, and belonging within any size of organization. So thank you to that organization as well. Next slide. I'm going fast because I want to make sure we get to our networking hour or networking session, which is next. So for those of you who joined us early and participated in the first networking session, you already know what this platform can do. For those of you that are new, we have another half an hour or so of networking that's available to you to connect, find those speakers that you were so inspired by today. And all you have to do is when we release you from here, you will be positioned at a table and you can double click on one of those blue chairs and you will magically appear at that table. Turn your camera and your microphone on, and it is like you're sitting at that table and enjoying a conversation. All of the tables have different names on them. You have an opportunity to have challenging conversations, mentoring conversations. If we have job seekers or those that have a long list of job openings, please go to the second floor. You'll see the elevator buttons on the left-hand side, and you can go to the second floor where there's job seeker tables in the middle of the layout. Please go and find someone that is looking for a job, or if you're looking for a job, I'm sure there's companies here today that are hiring. Don't forget to visit the Jabra and the Mercer McKay coffee bars. They have something for you and an opportunity to meet with incredible organizations. And if you want to find out more about the WIT Network, we have the concierge on that side, and Christine and I and many, many of our community leaders will be networking throughout the event, and we welcome that opportunity. So Christine, why don't you come on back on stage, my partner in the WIT Network, so that we can just say a final farewell to all of the amazing people that joined us today. Christine, thank you for your leadership in the WIT Network. I love working with you every single day, and this has just been another incredible conference.
So great.
What a great, great day. And I hope people keep the chat going, you know, keep those inspiration, those words of empowerment, and that today was really all about choosing to challenge. And I learned so much about what we can do and who do we lean on. And Christine, I certainly lean on you every day. So thank you for that.
Yes, that's mutual. And, you know, we'd love to ask everybody to take the photo of yourself doing the challenge today, blast it on social media, and tag us, and we'll be sure to celebrate you. So thank you all. We'll see you over at the networking tables. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, everyone.